My sister insulted me in front of the entire family. When I confronted her, Mom screamed, "Shut up!" The first time my sister called me the family's little charity case, I didn't correct her. I was standing at my aunt's house with a paper plate in my hand, listening to forks scrape against porcelain and watching my cousins drift between the living room and the backyard like they'd rehearsed it. It was one of those Sunday dinners where everyone arrived hungry and left with containers of leftovers and a new rumor. I'd gotten there early to help set the table because my aunt always needed an extra set of hands. I'd also gotten there early because showing up late gave my sister, Nadia, a reason to narrate my life to whoever would listen. Nadia didn't need a reason. She treated other people's attention like oxygen. She was already there, seated at the head of the long dining table as if the chair had been made for her. She wore a cream-colored blazer, even though we weren't going anywhere formal. Her hair looked like it had been curled and brushed for an hour. Her nails were the same pale pink they always were, the kind that looked expensive because they were. She glanced at me over the rim of her glass and smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, good," she said loudly enough for the room. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd be able to afford the gas." A few people laughed, not because it was funny, exactly, because laughing kept things smooth, because Nadia had always been the one you didn't challenge at family gatherings. I set the plate down, adjusted the stack of napkins, and said, "Hi." That was my role. Be calm, be useful, keep the peace. I was 28 at the time. I worked as an operations coordinator for a mid-sized medical supply company, the kind of job where you're invisible when things run right and blamed when they don't. I had my own apartment, my own car, and my own routine. My life was stable in a way Nadia never noticed, because stability doesn't photograph well. My sister was 31 and treated life like it was a series of stages. Engagement party, bridal shower, wedding, new house, new car, new baby announcement. Everything had to be public and shiny. She measured love in visible gestures. My mother loved Nadia's shine. It made her feel like she'd done something right. Mom walked into the room behind me with a bowl of salad and the bright, eager expression she saved for guests, even though these weren't really guests. This was family. Still, she moved like she was hosting an event. "Nadia," Mom said warmly, as if Nadia had said something charming. "Don't start." But her tone was light, no consequence behind it. Nadia leaned back and shrugged. "I'm not starting. I'm just worried. You know how things have been for her." Things. That one word could turn my whole life into a charity segment. I picked up a stack of plates and carried them toward the dining table. "I'm fine," I said, still calm. My cousin Lena gave me a look from across the room, a small flicker of sympathy. Lena was one of the few people in the family who didn't laugh when Nadia performed. Aunt Samira clapped her hands. "Okay, everyone, sit." Food's getting cold. People moved to their seats. The room filled with the sound of chairs scraping and adults negotiating where to sit, and kids being told again to wash their hands. I sat toward the end of the table, close enough to help pass dishes but far enough to avoid Nadia's center stage orbit. I chose that spot on purpose. Across from me, Nadia's fiancé, Hamza, looked at his phone under the table. He was tall, polite, and always a half step behind her. When he did look up, he smiled at me briefly, like someone acknowledging a coworker in the hallway. Nadia started talking before everyone sat down fully. She always did. Silence made her restless. "So," she said, drawing the word out, "we're finalizing the guest list this week." Mom's eyes lit up. Finally. Nadia nodded like she was granting a favor. "Yes, but we need to have a serious conversation about certain people." Her gaze slid to me without pausing, like I was a chair she didn't like the look of. I reached for the water pitcher and poured myself a glass. Aunt Samira frowned. "Certain people?" Nadia tapped her nails against her glass. "I just want the wedding to be classy, you know? No drama, no awkwardness." Lena muttered, "It's a wedding. There's always awkwardness." Nadia ignored her. "Some people don't know how to present themselves, and I don't want to explain anything to Hamza's family." Hamza's family, that was the real audience. She turned slightly toward him, softening her voice in a way that sounded affectionate but felt rehearsed. "They're very traditional. They'll judge everything. They'll judge me." Mom immediately leaned in. Of course, we understand." I kept my eyes on my plate. The first course was simple: rice, chicken, roasted vegetables. "Familiar? Safe," Nadia continued. So I was thinking maybe it's better if. Better if what? Aunt Samira asked. Nadia smiled. Better if my sister keeps things low-key. Doesn't make it about her. Doesn't show up looking confused. Confused, I repeated quietly, not as a question, just marking the word. Nadia's eyes flicked to me. You know what I mean. Like last Eid, when you wore that blazer that looked like it came from, I don't know, a school play. A few people chuckled again. Mom didn't. But she didn't stop it either. She just shifted her gaze, like if she looked away the moment would pass. I took a bite of rice, chewed, swallowed. My heart rate stayed steady. I'd learned years ago that reacting in the moment gave Nadia what she wanted: attention, control, proof that she could move me. My father sat halfway down the table, quiet as usual. He didn't speak much since his stroke 2 years earlier. Not because he couldn't. He could, slowly, but because he'd gotten used to letting Mom fill every silence. He watched Nadia with the same tired look he watched the news with. Nadia lifted her eyebrows as if waiting for me to defend myself. I didn't. She laughed softly. See? She agrees. Hamza cleared his throat. Nadia, maybe. She touched his wrist. Babe, it's fine. I'm just trying to avoid embarrassment. And then she said it. Casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Honestly, she's lucky we still include her. She's kind of, the family's little charity case. The word landed and stayed there. The table went quiet for a half second, just long enough to acknowledge that she'd crossed a line. Then the noise resumed in a different shape. Someone poured more water. Someone asked a kid to sit down. Aunt Samira forced a laugh that sounded like a cough. Mom smiled too quickly. Nadia, stop it. Eat. Still no consequence. I put my fork down carefully, not dramatically, just with intention. I looked up at Nadia. I didn't glare. I didn't show anger. I gave her the same neutral attention I'd give someone at work who'd made a sloppy mistake. Can you explain what you mean by that? I asked. Nadia's smile widened. She loved an open door. Oh my God, don't be sensitive. You know I'm joking. I'm asking for clarity, I said. What exactly are you calling me? Aunt Samira's eyes moved between us, nervous. Lena sat still, her jaw tight. Nadia leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was letting me in on a secret. You know you've had help. From Mom, from me, like when you were struggling. I took a sip of water, letting the pause stretch. What help specifically? Nadia blinked, momentarily thrown off by the question. She expected tears or a sharp comeback. She wasn't prepared for a calm request for details. Mom cut in, voice sharper. Enough. We're eating. I kept my gaze on Nadia, not Mom. I'm not arguing. I'm asking. Nadia shrugged with practiced innocence. I'm just saying you've always needed a little extra, and that's fine. Not everyone can keep up. Keep up with what? I asked. Nadia's cheeks flushed slightly, but her tone stayed sweet. With life, with responsibility, with adult things. Hamza shifted in his seat. Nadia. She ignored him again. It's okay. It's not her fault, she's just like this. Mom set her fork down hard enough that it clicked against the plate. Her face changed. The bright hostess expression fell away, replaced by something colder. Stop, Mom said. I turned my head slightly toward her. I'm not raising my voice, Mom's eyes flashed. I said stop. The table went quiet again, this time longer. I looked at my mother. I want to understand why she's comfortable saying this in front of everyone. Mom's mouth tightened, her hand lifted, palm down like she was pressing something into the table. Shut up, she said, loud. Not a hiss, not a whisper. A command. Several people froze. Lena's eyes widened. Aunt Samira stared at her plate like it had offended her. My father's gaze dropped to his hands. Nadia leaned back, satisfied, as if she'd just won something without lifting a finger. Mom's voice stayed elevated. Every time we try to have a nice dinner, you have to make it a thing. You always do this. You always ruin the mood. I didn't respond immediately. I let her words sit there, exposed. I watched the way the family absorbed them, the way they looked away, the way they accepted silently that the problem wasn't the person who insulted me publicly. It was me for asking what it meant. I picked up my fork again and took another bite of food. Slow. Normal. Mom's eyes narrowed. Are you going to behave? I swallowed. Yes, Nadia smirked. See? Told you. I kept eating. I passed dishes. I answered questions when someone asked me directly. I didn't defend myself. I didn't escalate. I didn't give Nadia or my mother the emotional reaction they were trying to provoke. Inside, I started arranging facts, not feelings. Facts. I knew what Nadia was referencing when she said help. There had been 1 year after my college graduation when I moved back home temporarily. I'd lost a job offer when the company froze hiring. I'd worked retail for a while, saved money, then moved out again. I'd paid my own bills since then, but Nadia had been telling a different story for years. One where I was constantly being rescued, constantly being carried, constantly being tolerated. I'd never corrected it because it didn't seem worth the fight. The people who mattered knew the truth. Or, I thought they did. As dessert was served, baklava too sweet, cut into neat squares, I watched Nadia scroll on her phone. She was probably posting a photo of the table, probably writing something about family love, probably cropping me out. Mom laughed at something Nadia said, leaning toward her with affection that felt like a reward. I sat there with my hands folded loosely in my lap, my expression steady. I didn't know yet how deep Nadia's version of my life went, or why Mom had snapped so hard. I only knew 2 things. Nadia wasn't joking, and Mom wasn't interested in fairness. When dinner ended, people stood and gathered their coats. Lena touched my elbow as she walked past me. You okay? She whispered. I'm fine, I said. She studied my face for a beat, then nodded slowly, like she didn't fully believe me but respected the calm. Call me later. I said I would. Outside, the air was cold enough to sharpen my focus. I walked to my car without rushing. Behind me, Nadia's laughter spilled out the front door as she said goodbye to someone. Mom's voice followed, bright again, like nothing had happened. I sat in my driver's seat and didn't turn the key right away. I took out my phone, opened my Notes app, and typed a single line, January 11th. Aunt Samira's dinner, charity case, Mom, shut up. Witnesses, Lena, Hamza, Aunt Samira, Dad. Then I saved it. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt clear. If they wanted me silent, I could do silence better than they ever expected. And the next time Nadia decided to tell my story in public, I would already have my own version ready, documented, dated, and impossible to laugh off. I started the car and drove home, letting the distance build while I stayed quiet. Behind the calm, a plan began forming. Not to hurt anyone. Not to embarrass anyone, but to stop letting other people narrate my life. And I knew exactly where to start. I didn't talk to anyone about that dinner for 3 days. Not Lena, not my father, not even myself out loud. I went to work, answered emails, sat in meetings, checked off tasks. I cooked dinner, cleaned my apartment, slept on schedule. From the outside, nothing changed. But every night, before I went to bed, I opened my Notes app and added details, dates, exact wording, who was in the room, who laughed, who stayed silent, who intervened, and how. I didn't do it to relive anything. I did it because memory gets blurry when people deny things later, and I already knew how this would go if I ever pushed back. Nadia would say she was joking, Mom would say she was stressed. Everyone else would say they didn't remember it that way. Facts don't need agreement. The first new entry came sooner than I expected. 2 days after the dinner, my mother called me during my lunch break. She didn't ask how I was. You embarrassed your sister, she said. I was sitting alone in my car, parked behind the building where I worked. I had 15 minutes before my next meeting. Enough time to listen. I didn't raise my voice, I said. I asked her to clarify what she said. Mom exhaled sharply. You always do this. You take things personally. Nadia was joking. I asked her what she meant by charity case. You know what she meant. I waited. Mom filled the silence. You've had help. You've struggled. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. Can you tell me what help I've had as an adult? I asked. There was a pause. Not long, but noticeable. Well, she said, we let you stay here after college. For 6 months, I said. I paid rent. That doesn't matter. It does, I said, calm. What else? Mom sighed. Why are you interrogating me? I'm trying to understand the story being told about me. Her voice tightened. This is exactly what I mean. You make everything into a confrontation. I checked the time on my dashboard clock. 10 minutes left. I'm not confronting you, I said. I'm asking for specifics. She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "You need to apologize to your sister. She's under a lot of stress with the wedding." "For what?" I asked. "For ruining the mood, for making her feel attacked." I nodded even though she couldn't see it. "I'll think about it." That satisfied her enough to end the call. I didn't apologize. Instead, I opened my email. There was a message from Nadia sent that same morning. Subject: "Lol, Nadia. Hey, Mom says you're upset. You really need to relax." I was joking. "Don't make this weird right before my wedding. Also, can you send me your address again? The planner needs it." No greeting. No apology. A request tucked neatly under dismissal. I stared at the email for a full minute before doing anything. Then I forwarded it to a private folder I just created and labeled Family. Nadia. I replied with one sentence. "Me. My address hasn't changed since August 2022. You can use the one you already have." No emotion. No accusation. A few hours later, she replied with a thumbs up emoji. That was when I understood something important. Nadia wasn't careless by accident. She was careless because she'd never been challenged in a way that stuck. She believed everything she said lived and died in the moment. She believed no one was keeping track. I started keeping track. The next week, I visited my parents' house to help my father with paperwork. He'd asked me to organize some medical forms for an upcoming appointment. I went on a Saturday morning, when Nadia wouldn't be there. Mom greeted me with forced cheerfulness. She offered coffee. I accepted. We didn't mention the dinner. I sat at the dining table with my father and spread out the documents. Appointment summaries, insurance statements, prescription lists. I made neat piles, labeled them, explained what was what. My father watched quietly. When I finished, he touched the edge of one folder and said slowly, "You're good at this." "Thank you," I said. Mom stood at the counter, scrolling on her phone. "Nadia's been handling a lot of this stuff too," she said casually. I looked up. "What stuff?" "Helping us out. With finances. With forms." I didn't react. I just asked, "Which finances?" Mom hesitated. "Just things. Transfers. Bills." I turned back to my father. "Has Nadia been paying anything for you?" He frowned slightly, searching his memory. "She said she was helping." "Helping how?" I asked. He looked at Mom. Mom waved her hand. "This isn't the time." I smiled politely. "I agree. We can talk later." I finished the paperwork and left after lunch. In my car, I opened my Notes app again. January 21st. Mom claims Nadia helps with parents' finances. No specifics given. Dad unsure. That night, I logged into my parents' shared online banking account. I had access because I'd helped set it up after my father's stroke. I hadn't checked it in months because I hadn't needed to. I wasn't suspicious then. I was just curious. I filtered transactions by name. Nadia's name appeared more times than I expected. Small amounts at first, $150, $200, labeled reimbursement, then larger ones, $1,200, $1,800, labeled wedding. My parents were retired, their income was fixed, they didn't spend much. These withdrawals stood out immediately. I opened the statements going back a year. There was a pattern. Every few months, money transferred from their savings into Nadia's account. Always after conversations about stress, about planning, about how expensive things were. There were no notes about repayment. I took screenshots, not all of them. Just enough to establish frequency, dates, and totals. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I cross-checked something else. I opened my own bank records from the year I'd lived at home. I pulled up proof of rent payments, utility contributions, grocery transfers, everything Nadia liked to pretend didn't exist. I organized the files into folders, labeled, backed up. A week later, Nadia called me. Her tone was light, cheerful, like we were friends who just drifted for a bit. "Hey, so I'm finalizing seating arrangements." "That's exciting," I said. She laughed. "You're not mad anymore?" "I wasn't mad," I said. I was quiet. She didn't catch the distinction. "Right. Anyway, we need to talk about something." I waited. "So, Hamza's parents are very observant," she said. "They ask questions, and I don't want them getting the wrong idea about our family." "What idea?" I asked. Another pause. Shorter this time. "Well, that everyone's stable. I pictured the seating chart, names in neat rows, decisions that felt small but weren't. Okay, I said. She exhaled in relief. So I was thinking maybe it's better if you don't sit too close to the front, just to keep things smooth. I didn't argue. Where would I sit? Toward the back, with some of the cousins. It's not a big deal. I'll think about it, I said. She laughed. Don't overthink it. After the call, I didn't write anything down immediately. I waited until I got home. Then I added another entry. February 2nd. Nadia asked to seat me toward the back to avoid questions from fiancé's family. I started noticing how often Nadia spoke for me when others were around, how she framed my life in convenient shorthand, how Mom backed her version instinctively. At a birthday lunch for my cousin, Nadia told a group of aunts that I was still figuring things out. I was promoted the month before. I smiled and passed the bread. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to, because the more she spoke, the more consistent her story became, and the easier it was to compare it to reality. The key moment came unexpectedly. On a Thursday evening, when I wasn't looking for anything at all, I was organizing the folder with my parents' financial statements, planning to suggest a review with an advisor. As I scrolled, I noticed a transaction that didn't fit the pattern, a transfer from my parents' account to mine. $2,500, dated 11 months earlier. I stared at the screen. I'd never received that money. I checked my own bank records. No matching deposit. I checked again. Same result. Then I noticed something else. The account number listed as the recipient didn't match mine. It matched Nadia's. The transfer description read, "To in support," my name, used as a label. I sat very still. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't family dynamics. This was documentation. I opened the transaction details and took screenshots. Then I pulled every instance where my name had been used in transfer notes. There were 3. Total, $7,400. All sent to Nadia. All labeled as support for me. I leaned back in my chair and let the weight of that settle. This was the story Nadia had been telling. That, I was the one being helped. That I was the burden, and she had receipts to prove it, because she'd written my name on money she took for herself. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused, because now I understood why Mom reacted the way she had at dinner, why she shut me down so fast, why Nadia was so comfortable calling me a charity case in public. They weren't just defending an image. They were protecting a paper trail. I created a new folder and named it Key Receipts, and I knew, with certainty, that Nadia's wedding, the event she was so desperate to curate, was about to become something very different, not because I would disrupt it, but because the truth was already scheduled to arrive, and it wouldn't need my voice to be heard. The wedding invitation arrived the following Monday. Cream cardstock, gold lettering, a QR code printed neatly in the corner for RSVPs. Nadia had chosen everything with precision. Fonts, spacing, presentation. It looked exactly like her. Polished, expensive, controlled. I scanned the code and opened the seating preview. My name was there. Table 14, back corner of the hall. I confirmed my attendance without comment. I didn't mention the money. I didn't ask Nadia about the transfers. I didn't confront my mother. Silence at this point wasn't avoidance. It was strategy. Because once you reveal that you know something, people stop being careless. And Nadia was still very careless. Over the next month, she became more visible online. Daily posts, wedding countdowns, stories of dress fittings, menu tastings, venue walkthroughs. She tagged vendors constantly. She documented everything. She also talked. At another family gathering, this time my uncle's anniversary dinner, she repeated the same narrative. Louder. More confidently. "She's always been sensitive," she said when someone asked why I was quiet. "We just try to protect her." Protect. The word appeared often in her vocabulary when she needed to justify control. I noticed who was listening. Hamza's mother had started attending these gatherings. She was polite, observant, and spoke little. When she did, people leaned in. Nadia was careful around her, but not careful enough. "She doesn't really handle pressure well," Nadia said at one point, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "So we keep things simple for her." Hamza's mother nodded slowly. She didn't smile. I met her eyes briefly and inclined my head in greeting. Nothing more. I added another entry to my notes later that night. I also started preparing something else. A timeline, Not emotional, not accusatory, just dates, transactions, and direct quotes. I included screenshots of the bank transfers, the ones labeled with my name. I included copies of my rent payments from the year Nadia claimed I was being supported. I included the email where she dismissed my reaction as making things weird. I included the seating request. I didn't annotate them yet. I just organized him. Meanwhile, Nadia escalated. 3 weeks before the wedding, Mom called me again. "Your sister says you've been distant," she said. "I've been busy," I replied. "Well, she's worried you're holding a grudge." "I'm not," Mom paused. "Then you'll help, right?" "With what?" "The wedding. She's overwhelmed. She needs support." I waited. "She was hoping you could contribute," Mom continued. "Financially." There it was. "How much?" I asked. Mom hesitated. "Just something. Whatever you can. I'll need details," I said. "What specifically would the money be for?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Nadia hasn't finalized it," Mom said, "but she's been paying for a lot herself." I thought of the bank statements. "I'll think about it," I said. That answer satisfied her enough to end the call. I didn't send any money. 2 days later, Nadia messaged me directly. "Nadia, hey, Mom said she'd talk to you. Did you decide? Things are getting really tight." Me. "I need to see a breakdown first." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Nadia, why are you being difficult? This is family." Me. "A breakdown isn't difficult. It's standard." She didn't reply. Instead, she posted a story on Instagram, black text on a white background. "It's wild how some people disappear when you need them most, but growth is learning who really supports you." Several relatives liked it. One commented with a heart. I screenshotted it and saved it to the folder. The next careless move came from a different direction. My father called me late one evening. His voice was slower than usual. "Your mother is upset," he said. "I know," I replied. "She says you're questioning things. About money." I didn't deny it. "I'm trying to understand." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Nadia told us you needed help last year." I closed my eyes. "What kind of help?" I asked gently. "Money," he said. "She said you were struggling again. That you didn't want to ask us directly." "Did she say how much?" I asked. "No." "Did she say when?" "No." I let the silence stretch. "I didn't need money last year," I said finally. "And I didn't receive any." Another long pause. "I thought it was strange," my father said, "but your mother said not to worry." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall. This wasn't just about Nadia's image anymore. This was about my parents' trust being used as a prop. I didn't confront Mom. I didn't confront Nadia. I adjusted the timeline. Then I took one more step. I requested copies of the full bank statements directly from the bank, not screenshots. Official PDFs. Time-stamped, with account numbers partially masked but clearly legible. I didn't need permission. I was an authorized user. When they arrived in my email, I saved them and backed them up twice. The wedding day drew closer. Nadia sent a group message to the bridal party and family members about logistics, arrival times, dress code, photo schedules. I was instructed to arrive early. For family photos. I acknowledged the message. The venue was a large event hall attached to a hotel. Capacity, around 300. A stage at the front. A projector screen mounted high above it, used for slideshows and speeches. I noted that detail when I visited the website. 2 days before the wedding, Nadia called me unexpectedly. Her voice was tight. "I heard you've been asking Dad questions." I asked him about finances. I said, "Why?" she snapped. "So I understand," I replied. "You're being dramatic," she said. "You always do this when attention isn't on you." "I'm not asking for attention," she laughed, sharp. "Then what do you want?" I answered honestly. Accuracy. She went quiet. "You're going to ruin this," she said finally. "I'm attending your wedding," I said. "That's all." She hung up. The night before the wedding, I laid everything out on my dining table. Printed statements, labeled folders, a single-page summary with bullet points and totals. I didn't rehearse a speech. I didn't plan an ambush. I simply prepared the truth in a format that could be understood quickly by anyone who looked at it. The morning of the wedding, I dressed simply. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw comment. I arrived early, as instructed. The hall was already busy, vendors setting up. family members milling around. Nadia moved through the space like a director, issuing instructions, adjusting details. She saw me and stiffened briefly, then smiled. "You made it," she said. "Yes," I replied. She leaned closer. "Please don't make today about you." I met her eyes. "I won't." And I meant it. Because by the time the ceremony ended and the reception began, Nadia herself would open the door. She had planned a family tribute segment, a slideshow, a microphone, a public moment to thank the people who had supported her through everything. She announced it proudly to the room, glowing under the lights. "I want to share something special," she said, gesturing toward the stage. I stood when instructed, folder in hand, and walked forward calmly. The screen lit up, and just before the first slide appeared, I realized everyone was watching, including my mother, including Hamza's parents, including the entire family who had laughed when I was called a charity case. I placed the folder on the podium and waited for Nadia to finish speaking. She smiled at me, assuming I was there to play my part. She had no idea what was about to appear behind her. The first slide was a screenshot, no commentary, no captions, just a bank transfer, date, amount. Account numbers partially masked, my name typed into the memo line. Support for my name. A murmur moved through the room, subtle but immediate. People leaned forward, phones lowered. Nadia turned slightly, confused, then looked back at the screen. She laughed once, short and uncertain. "Oh, this must be the wrong file." I didn't touch the microphone yet. The second slide appeared. Another transfer, larger amount. Same memo, then a third. A summary slide followed. Total transferred using my name, $7,400 recipient account. Nadia. The room went quiet in a way that felt heavy rather than awkward. I stepped to the microphone. "I won't take long," I said. My voice carried without strain. "This isn't a speech. It's clarification." Nadia stared at me, her expression tight, calculating. "For the past year," I continued, "I've been referred to publicly as someone who needed financial support, as a burden, as a charity case." I didn't look at her when I said it. I looked at the audience. "That story was supported by these transactions, money taken from my parents' account, labeled with my name and transferred elsewhere." I clicked the remote once. The next slide showed my own bank records from the same period. No deposits. Clean. "I didn't receive this money," I said. "I didn't ask for it. I didn't know about it." A chair scraped somewhere behind me. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Nadia stepped forward. "This is inappropriate," she said sharply. "This is not the time." I turned my head slightly toward her. "I agree, which is why I didn't choose it." I clicked again. Screenshots of my rent payments from the year I lived at home. Dates, amounts, notes, rent, utilities. "I paid my expenses," I said. "I've been financially independent since." Hamza stood up slowly. His face had gone pale. My mother hadn't moved. She was staring at the screen like it might change. "I'm not here to accuse," I said. "I'm here to correct the record." I set the remote down. That's all. I stepped away from the microphone and returned to my seat. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Hamza's mother stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry. She looked precise. "Can we see the full statements?" she asked. I stood again, walked to the edge of the stage, and handed her the folder. "They're official copies. You're welcome to review them." She nodded once and opened it. Nadia's voice cracked. "This is private family business." Hamza looked at her, really looked at her. "You told me she needed help," he said quietly. Nadia turned to him. "I was trying to protect our image." Hamza's father spoke next. "By lying?" Mom finally stood. "She was under stress," she said. This was a misunderstanding. Hamza's mother closed the folder and handed it back to me. "There is no misunderstanding here." The room shifted. People began talking, not loudly, but urgently. Questions moved in low waves. Who knew? How long? How much? I stayed seated. Nadia left the hall first. She didn't run. She walked quickly, head high, jaw set. Mom followed her. The reception continued in a fragmented way. Music played. Food was served, but the energy had changed. Conversations were careful now. Hamza came to my table. "I'm sorry," he said, "for believing it. For not asking." I nodded. "Thank you for listening." He hesitated. "We'll need time." "I understand," I said. My father sat beside me, silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I should have asked more questions." "You trusted your daughter," I replied. "That's not a failure." He reached for my hand and squeezed it once. I left early. In the weeks that followed, consequences unfolded without my involvement. The wedding photos were never posted. Nadia and Hamza postponed their honeymoon. My parents met with a financial advisor. Access was changed. Accounts were separated. Nadia stopped calling. Mom called once. She didn't apologize. She asked why I'd done it like that. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I stopped letting things be said about me." We didn't speak much after that. I didn't lose my family, but I stopped performing for them. I kept my boundaries simple. Short visits, neutral conversations, no corrections unless asked. The story about me needing help disappeared. There was nothing left to support it. Months later, Lena told me people still talked about the wedding. Not with gossip, with caution. I didn't feel victorious. I felt settled. My life stayed quiet. My work continued. I slept well. And for the first time, when I walked into a room with my family, no one tried to explain who I was before I could speak. They already knew, or they knew better than to guess.